Fleming. I always want to call it
Fleming.
something else. Finley. I always want to call it Finley. I don't know why. But it's Fleming. You know, like Fleming. And I will be goofy today. I've been toad sucking all day.
Oh yeah. How's that coming along? Oh, and we're live.
Okay.
Comes Rod.
Just all time. I don't know if Joanna.
So I guess the bottom line is we assume it was something that was sort of grandfathered in before Public Art Board formed and then just is now coming to fruition is our best guess.
Yes.
But overall takeaway is nobody's really sure.
Yes.
Fascinating.
I have not really been involved.
Has the city been involved? Like, I guess I'm curious how that communication between chamber and city has gone with that.
I do not know that part.
That's largely been discussions, above, I think, executive to executive.
Okay.
You're right.
No, Peyton's in a different spot, and so is Kyle. They changed it up.
Messing with the whole system. I sat here last time. I have sat over there before.
You were usually
I've been here for the past couple
Okay, I
times,
guess
I
that's,
think.
oh, James was there last time, okay. Switching it out. Now James is really throwing a wrench in it because he's in another space.
Yeah.
I want to be traveling. Did you see our little friend?
Anybody's.
Allison is, hey, on the beach. And Will just landed. They're going to be staying a couple of days in Marco.
Oh, I was talking, I'm gonna go there in June.
Have some materials.
The little plane that dropped them off in Marco. I guess.
Do we know about Joanna? Has anybody heard from
I
her?
just texted her. And she has not said. And I have not heard from her.
I texted her earlier today, so I think.
Tell me about toad size. Looking good? Can be good this year?
From what I can tell, she's intending to make it. Hey, Kyle, can you grab those
It's
two
the only
little
thing that matters.
puzzles?
Oh, yeah.
$12 and
Ah.
stick
Than you
those
can
out.
ever imagine.
Gross. Food on a stick.
Yeah, that's what it is. The
What?
food on the capital
There's
festival.
some bizarre meat or something on a stick, and that sort of satisfies the masses.
You know.
Well,
You deep fry
have
it,
a new
then.
hero sandwich guy. That is,
Ooh.
yeah.
Yeah,
That's a little
I
different.
guess it's how
it's been ordered finally.
how do you say it properly though?
Nice.
My Turkish
Yeah.
friend
Well,
said
yeah,
it's
Mural shields a lot
gyro,
of stock,
like
so.
gyroscope, because it's on a spit that
Well,
spins like a
We got the part two,
gyroscope.
we need the part
I'm
one.
like, oh, that's ruined the whole
I've
mystique.
never heard it called gyro. So it's spelled though.
Yeah.
Which the Greek
We've seen a
word.
couple of those posted around lately. It's like,
Yeah.
speak now or forever hold
Yeah.
your peace.
Yeah.
It's for real.
He does a whole bunch of other-
It's like, I was like backed up, like at least 20 people trying to get into my bag.
Same
I was like,
thing. Oh,
where do you get maybe 2 away from 5?
Nowhere here. I went to Turkey a
Wow,
few years ago.
that's a lot.
Yeah, it was amazing.
I was like, all right,
I went all over. I went to
you want to be
Istanbul,
safe
Izmir,
here?
and
Say
Antalya.
something.
You know, they're gonna have
Did
to-
Did you make it to Ephesus?
Yes, I
Hey,
did.
man, are you ready?
What about
Well, since we've got Amanda here,
Yeah.
Dude, that you.
I'll tell you about it later.
Okay.
It was good.
since we've got Amanda here and we're only lacking one committee member, say we go ahead and get started. First order of business before we start anything is minutes from our February meeting.
I make a motion that we approve
Second.
Awesome.
as presented.
All in favor? Any opposed? Awesome. So approved. Cool. Well, as you see on screen, we have two visiting guests, Mr. James Walden and Amanda. So Amanda Golden, please take it away. Tell us about the Public Art Master Plan, where we are, how the meeting earlier this week went, and what our plans for moving forward are.
All right, thanks y'all. James, is there anything you want to say before I kind of get started with my presentation?
Yeah, so I will be dropping off at about 5:45 5, I got asked kind of last minute to present for some zoning training for APA, our state APA chapter tonight. But kind of the path forward after this, we will have there'll be a committee meeting for council on May the 10th, where this will be presented. And I apologize, neighbor is running their whatever those things are called. I can't remember what they're called.
Lawnmower?
Thing that blows leaf blower. Sorry.
We can't hear it.
Yeah, we just hear the truck smash.
So we'll take it to then that will be sort of a presentation of the plan. We will set up for May 16th an official public hearing to the Planning Commission at that time. We'll bring it to y'all that Wednesday for a vote of support on it, and then that last council meeting in May is when we will take the plan at that time for approval. So. And we have ran the public hearing notice for the 16th. We're running that. So.
Yeah, question in the room?
James, I have a question that relates to public art that I feel like we need your input on. So if you're leaving soon, can we jump into that before you leave?
Sure. Yeah.
And I think it does apply to what Amanda is doing as well, because we've talked about including this in the plan.
Yep.
So Jessica Jones, Amanda, that's the muralist who's all over Conway, reached out to me today. She is concerned about a project she's working on and the way it's been presented to her. The neighborhood pet shop downtown, they actually got recommendations from the Main Street, what is it called, the Main Street Commission or whatever?
It's Main Street, Arkansas.
Main Street, Arkansas, which actually suggested doing murals of animals as part of their facade. But Jessica was told that they could not do animals in a mural because that would be too much of advertising, from what I understood. She was pretty upset about it, which I understand that, her comment was, if the city refuses murals on walls that have logos on them, they are intentionally crippling me as a working artist and local businesses making an honest effort to beautify the community. Almost every private business requests relevance of the art to their business, and if this is not permissible by the city, it is a direct attack to my way of living and the art community as a whole. Which I have to say I agree with. Anyway, I don't know where the situation is, where it's at. But I've got a picture of the mural here of anybody, the suggested mural. It's not an actual mural suggested, if anybody wants to see it.
And this was done probably it's been almost 3 years ago, 2.5. This.
Right, she said another artist was starting and then got denied, and now they're trying it again, I guess.
Who's denying them? Like, where does that come from?
I don't know if they got denied. This was done by Main Street, and then I don't know when the disconnect. But anyway.
And I know this goes back to that whole idea of what is advertisement versus mural, and I understand that. I guess this to me looks very different than what I would see as just an advertisement. So I'm curious how that's coming along with how we are making those determinations and what that looks like in the plan.
Good question.
And this is.
Go ahead.
Well, I'm just saying that this is coming up a lot lately. This isn't the only one, obviously. There's been several, and there's going to be some more with some other businesses wanting to have.
Well, it seems like that's standard advice for community and economic development folks, right? Is do something new and fresh with your business facade. I guess the question is, do we know offhand, or can we find out what the relevant ordinances are?
Yeah.
And see kind of where the wording lies and everything else, and is there recommendations?
Yeah, it's in the definition of what a sign is in the sign ordinance.
Because
So it's basically anything that is intended to attract someone to a location, if it's, tangentially related to the business. So, for instance, if there's two people walking a dog, the relationship is to a pet shop because it implies that, you can buy dog leashes at the pet shop. So it solely relates back to the definition of sign. The flip side of that is when you consider that, then it becomes a wall sign. So let's say we're great with that, then that also means that a gigantic wall sign is okay. So it's not really necessarily about it being mural. It's about the type of speech, it being commercial speech.
I guess
So
that's-
if it were anything other than, if it wasn't related to that particular activity of something related to the pet shop, then it wouldn't be considered commercial speech.
I guess I understand that if it's a logo or a catchphrase of the business, but I mean, if you put a mural of people on the side of a building wearing clothes and they sell clothes in that store, it's the same concept, but you can't do a mural of people without clothes. So, I mean, I guess where's the fine line there? Like, it just doesn't, does that make sense to anybody else?
This is, honestly, I think, Amanda's here really to talk about the public art master plan. Honestly, this is an issue outside of, this is a sign ordinance issue. It's not a public art issue in a sense that it is not under the purview of what you all review, because it's a regulatory issue with commercial speech.
Okay.
So that's something appropriate, for the planning commission to discuss. If that individual didn't like the determination that was made by the administrative official on that item, that determination could be appealed to the planning commission. But this is not the proper body to do that or the time right now.
Okay, that's good. I didn't know who was in charge of that, and I don't think anybody involved in this knew, so that's good to know. And I brought it up again because I know at some point it had been discussed in this meeting with Amanda that it would be something about that would be a part of this plan. So I apologize if it was out of place. That was why I brought it up.
I gotta run, guys. See y'all later.
Thanks, James. See ya. All right, folks, can you all see my screen?
We can.
Yes. That has never happened before in a meeting with you guys, so I am.
We're good.
Okay, awesome. So, as Peyton knows, and probably likely many of you know, we spent yesterday morning for a few hours reviewing with the steering committee kind of the draft items in the plan. As James said, we are going to be going on May 10th for kind of the first presentation to City Council. And from there will be 2 additional meetings, which will end on May 24th with an official, we hope, adoption. We did have one of the council members on that meeting yesterday, and Kim was on there too, so I'm sorry to not acknowledge that. I'm sorry, I totally forgot about that. But one of the council members was on the meeting yesterday and was very supportive of the work that we have done and very excited about the public art master plan. So that was very encouraging to hear. Even many of what we kind of thought were ambitious goals, the council member was excited about as well, which I think is really fantastic and exciting for all of you. So I'd like to kind of go through the presentation. And I'm going to stop at certain points and ask if there are questions. It is a kind of a long, lengthy presentation, and I'm going to be mindful because I know that you all have additional items on your agenda. So I want to be aware of that. But I also want to make sure that you get kind of all of the information that you could possibly need to kind of think through what this plan is going to be. And I will go ahead and say that it is my fault 100% that you do not have a draft in front of you. I'm very ambitious in that I did tell James and Kyle that I could get the document to them within a week of their edits, the final edits to the text. No, that didn't happen. So I'm just going to go ahead and just take responsibility for that and let you know that that is completely my fault. It was our intention for you to have a copy of that document by today's meeting. I do feel, I hope it's going to be by Friday, but it will likely be Monday that we can get that out. And then the following Friday, which is like May 7th, 6th, 7th, that is when it will appear in some of the material for the council meeting on the following Tuesday.
We have one quick question to start.
She doesn't take a breath. Hey, I just have a quick question about what this is tonight. Are you giving us a version of what you're going to present to City Council?
This will likely be exactly what I'm going to present,
Okay.
but I only have 10 minutes for a presentation, so it won't be as in-depth.
Whoa, okay. Wow. Okay.
Right, Kyle?
I
That
believe
hasn't
so.
changed.
It's not
Right.
a lot of time, yeah.
So, yes, this is a version of what I'm going to be presenting,
Got it.
but this is a very long version of what I'm going to be presenting.
Okay. Thank you.
And what I likely will do will be they'll receive the document, it'll be a PDF. They'll also receive this presentation, which is a longer version, which is like the snapshot of the plan that outlines everything. And then they'll receive my presentation, which will likely be 10 slides or less.
Wow.
So,
Sweet.
because, ultimately we want to leave time for them to talk. That's really where council members want to spend their time, and we want to yield our time to them to ask questions.
Good.
Sound good?
Yep.
Okay, awesome. So first, we're going to kind of go through the community insights and the vision for the future, which is really, there are no changes, so I'll actually skip that. Then we're going to go to the strategies that we've come up with to help guide decision-making. We're going to talk about how to operationalize the program itself, so what steps needed there are to kind of make the program actually get started and run really well. We're going to talk about strategies to activate the program. So how is the public going to physically see kind of the manifestation of all the work that the city has done, the work that you all have done, actually out in the public? And then we're going to talk about some conceptual projects for future consideration. And those conceptual projects, I'm just going to go ahead and tell you now, and I will remind you again, those are conceptual only and are not bound for implementation upon adoption of this plan. So I am going to go ahead and just skip the vision and the mission because we talked about that. I'm not going to read it out loud to you because they're exactly the same as what you all came up with last meeting. And thank you for that. The steering committee felt very strongly that those were very representative of how they felt and how the program should move forward. All right. So how are we going to make this vision a reality? The first step, which also you also already know, is this was also presented to you last time, but I am going to remind you. The first is to further define the role of the Public Art Advisory Committee. So we are recommending that we change the title of your committee to Public Art Advisory Committee. It provides clarification for your role and will be codified, and that will kind of support kind of some of the worries that all of you had at the very beginning of this process and have had ongoing. Again, your responsibilities that are namely the same, but have been a little bit more narrowly defined are to provide input and advise staff about the Public Art Master Plan and any proposed policy to support the program, which you have been doing wonderfully throughout this entire process. The next is to provide input into developing that annual work plan, which is also an item that we talked about at our last meeting. And we'll talk a little bit more about what's going to be included in the annual work plan. But as a reminder, that is focused solely on what the committee and the city has done the previous fiscal year and what they are intending to do the upcoming fiscal year. And that annual work plan serves as a record-keeping opportunity for the city, but also as an opportunity for the public to kind of hear what's going on, what has gone on, and how the city has invested money for public art. The next is to provide input in establishing criteria and eligibility standards for any applicants of projects that the city is putting out there. Support staff in establishing criteria for awarding those projects. And then finally, broadly, just act principally in an advisory capacity to Conway staff in any matter pertaining to public art. Because we wanted to make sure that there any and all other assigned duties is kind of what that feels like. Okay. Step 2 is to streamline program management through the establishment of that staff-driven public art committee, which we talked about last time as well. This committee is going to be called the Interdepartmental Public Art Coordination Committee, and I know that these are like nightmare titles, but we want to make sure that the title really reflects the purpose of the group so that there is no confusion. Kind of questions in the future about what did we mean. And that staff committee, again, is going to be focused on developing that annual work plan, coming back to you guys and presenting that and making sure that everyone feels comfortable, and everyone's going to be acting as a sounding board to each other within that annual program update. In order to create that annual program update, various city departments will come together to determine the availability of any funding that exists and any projects that are anticipated. They're going to identify projects to be paid for by whatever that identified funding might be, including acquisition of new pieces, commissioning of new pieces, as well as any maintenance dollars that need to be allocated for that upcoming year. They will be developing that draft program update that will include specific locations for new projects, any goals for those projects, and any budgets that need to be kind of maybe asked for or aware of within a new project that's coming up. And those any programming that will support any of that artwork. The staff will also host a public meeting to present the accomplishments, which is that program update of the previous year. And we'll talk about any anticipated projects, which we hope really builds a buzz and a lot of public support for the program itself. And then finally, any feedback from City Council will go into that final program update and will be reflective in the budget that is given ultimately. In the document, we are going to have a flow chart that kind of shows how these relationships work and at what point and how these things flow. Government processes need flow charts to make sense because they're oftentimes kind of like who's reviewing what and where's it going. So the Interdepartmental Coordination Committee will be, again, identifying those projects. They are really the people who understand the funding opportunities within each project. And then they're going to be sharing that information with you. You're going to be providing input back to them on those opportunities that are identified. So, hey, there's funding in a park. Let's think about what could go in that park, what's relevant, what's special, what's of historic value in that park. Let's think about what those projects might be. And you all are going to be suggesting potential projects for inclusion within that program update for any specific projects, but also broadly. And then finally, the public art manager, which is going to be currently James and Kyle. I think they're going to probably share that role. But the public art manager will anticipate any projects within their current workload. They're going to be the ones who are managing, kind of all the paperwork, the RFQs, the processes. They're going to be holding all those submissions. And then they're going to be obviously releasing the RFPs for each project. They're also going to be making sure that the implementation and fabrication is happening on time and as promised by any artists who are being commissioned. They're going to be considering opportunities for any of the general fund allocated money and helping understand what money exists and how that money can be spent. And then finally, they're going to be maintaining regular updates on each project that's identified within that program update. So that annual program update is really the most important document that I think will be produced on an annual basis outside of the art that is a commission itself. Okay. The third step, as you all also know, is to update the ordinance with all the things that we've talked about. The fourth is to implement that policy, which you've also seen and reviewed, which includes collection management, donation, and any artwork that's on loan. Also includes maintenance policies of existing work and also future work. So helping an artist understand what would be required of them when they are submitting their final documentation for any commissioned work so that the city can have a maintenance plan that's pre-built by the artist who created the artwork itself. And then finally, those mural guidelines, which is something that you already brought up today. And those are all going to be provided to council for adoption in a few weeks. And finally, the fifth step is to consider adopting sustainable funding practices. And we've provided a variety of funding opportunities in the document for council to really think about and study further. The first is to consider a percent for public art on a project by project basis in public projects. So instead of suggesting that there's a blanket percent for art policy put in place, we're recommending that the city consider that on a project by project basis. That way, if there is a utility project, they're not automatically guaranteed to include public art in a utility project. But if they're doing a roundabout street rehabilitation project, they may say, okay, well, we know these are great opportunities. Let's just go ahead and include budget for public art here. And let's make sure that it is reflective of that percentage. The next is a voluntary percent for art contribution by private developers. Many communities swear by this. I have never worked in communities that have this funding mechanism or this kind of program in place personally, but I have read many case studies in which this has been successful. These developers, when they go in for their permitting, are required to come before a body like yours, where you will ask them and grill them about putting public art in their development. It becomes really hard to say no to people that you're friends with or that you eat next to at a restaurant. And so these communities often find that ask and just the act of going before a body who is asking them to do something and not requiring it, that often yields public art and private development. Now, some of those communities who have those programs, they'll show images of the art that comes out of that. And because they don't have a policy, they don't really have control over what that looks like. But many developers are doing murals, which I think is fantastic and a really great way to incorporate public art that is, really wonderful. There is a picture in one of the case studies that I have recently read that has a cowboy statue in front of it in Atlanta, and you're like, relevance? I don't know. And it was because the developer likes cowboys. So to each his own.
It's probably a safe bet with the signage ordinance.
Yeah. The next is to understand the current impact fees that exist within the city, understand where those impact fees haven't been updated in years, and then propose an update to those impact fees, and then take a portion of the impact fee, the increase, which would obviously add additional funding opportunities. And then finally, the exploration of diverting a portion of those building permit fees. So if the city needs X amount as their baseline to operate kind of their general fund and to pay their staff, which is what those permit fees are kind of based on. If there is a threshold in which they can pay their staff for that upcoming year, anything over that is what we're proposing that the city allocate toward public art. So money they wouldn't need to support their staff could go to public art in that case.
Amanda?
Yes.
I can't remember. I was having a terrible time the other morning with hearing everything, but did Gail happen to mention anything about the percent for art for not just public projects, but private projects as well?
Gail, she talked about, are you talking about at UCA?
Uh-huh.
She didn't talk about private development projects at UCA, but she has talked extensively in our calls. I had a focus group with her and her colleagues, as well as a one-on-one call with her, and she did talk about the public requirement from the state on campus. The city would have doesn't matter.
Okay. Just,
there's no review process that the city would have because essentially a university, the city doesn't have to approve other than building permits for safety reasons. What happens on those? They're considered private streets. I don't know if that's where you were going with that question.
well, no, I mean, there, years ago, we looked at actually, doing a requirement of a, percent for public art for any development, not
Private
just
development.
Private development as well.
Yeah.
And
That's how San Francisco works.
No.
That's how San Francisco works.
Yeah.
Theirs is baked in though they have a beautiful setup. But it includes that as a portion of it, so
Yeah.
there's always a
And I didn't know if
consideration.
that had come up in any, before. I know what she had talked about, so I was kind of thinking that, I saw that on the public, but I didn't see it in the private development as well. I didn't know if that'd be something we could look at or want to include at this point and then kick it out later, I don't know.
So we talked a lot about what a requirement would look like in Conway and if that would be favorable to elected officials. It was determined that it would not be.
I think that's correct.
Want to maintain the developer-friendly atmosphere and make sure that developers continue to come back.
Okay,
It is a really wonderful tool. I agree. Any questions before I move to kind of the strategies for launching the program? This is all the technical stuff the steering committee, I had to share a lot more information with them because that was the first time they were hearing a lot of the kind of steps that we were talking about, but you all have heard every step. So I'm happy to answer more questions, but.
So Amanda, this is a little bit building on some of the questions from the steering committee and then just, I think, some
Sure.
lingering questions we have here. And I don't want to try to add an additional workload on top of everything else y'all have pulled together. But I didn't know if we might include recommendations for that standalone position of public art manager. I know the immediate future is for Kyle and James to share some of that responsibility. But I think especially when we look at some of the implementation and think about the depth of what we'll have to add, I think having one of those in the nearer future than we were anticipating, than far off when our collection grows, might be beneficial. And I only say that, considering, y'all have a lot else on your plate. And I know that's true of other city employees as well. Y'all are kind of at max capacity, it seems like, just taking a stab in the dark. And I also say that in light of, so there's currently, we mentioned it as well, there's a roundabout art project that's being put on with the Chamber of Commerce, everything else, that no one has yet been able to articulate quite the background mechanics of that project, which is fine. We're assuming it was grandfathered in. As far as James knows, it's an executive to executive thing. So I think that maybe Bart is talking to Brad and said, hey, this seems like a good idea. And then sometimes that's the way things get done. Sorry, Amanda, our mayor is talking to the executive director of our chamber.
I know who these folks are, yep.
Oh, perfect, yes.
Yeah.
So I understand that sometimes that happens. However, I'm just trying to think of, if they're not talking now and we don't have insight to that now, having a singular person whose job it is to bird dog all of that will be very, very helpful so that we're not piling that on top of, it's going to be an uphill climb, I guess is what I'm saying, to establish the legitimacy of the public art manager and this plan. Knowing that it has support of the council and has everything else, we're still in a point right now where we have big question marks and don't have answers for them and don't know who to ask, because normally the people we would ask are in this room and usually have a pretty good connection to how those things unfold. So I don't know, all that it's very long-winded, sorry, wraps around to, are there some best practices, are there some recommendations we can put in the plan that might help speed up that process? Or is it just kind of, those are the cards you're dealt when you're dealing with a municipality?
So hiring a full-time employee in any municipality is very difficult. It is something that takes years to build up to. And I'm sure many of you know that. You probably work for nonprofits and other organizations, that it literally takes so much to get a full-time employee.
Yep.
We are including a job description so that it is evident to people who are reading this plan that it is not something that you just add onto somebody's plate and stuff gets done when there are multiple projects that are happening at one time. As I shared yesterday, Peyton, in the meeting, I live in a very large city. I live in, the 14th largest city in the US, and we are hired to help manage every single project that has happened since 2014 here in the city.
Right.
Because the staff can't do it. There's too much. They have too much going on. So, and I also shared yesterday in that meeting that what is easier oftentimes than getting a full-time employee is, and I know that this is not what people want to hear, but it is the truth. It's easier to add money into a project to hire a consultant to manage a project over time than it is to hire a full-time person, because I assume that this meeting is being recorded.
Yes.
I'm just going to say, generally, when you hire someone into a city, you are assuming that they are going to stay there until they retire, just because, a city job is a really great job. And so you have to really think about the longevity of that position. If it's unionized, what that means. So there's just a lot more that goes into hiring a person as a staff person than it goes into hiring a consultant on a project by project basis. And so I find that many cities right now, literally everywhere, are hiring either nonprofit, like local nonprofits to assist in managing programs, or they're hiring like specialized consultants to help manage projects for them. And those are all varied in broader consulting contracts. So like for instance, I'm on a project right now, I'm hired by an engineer to manage something for the city, but the city is the one who told the engineer that this is what
Go hire
we
a
want you to.
consultant. Yeah.
So
Interesting. I just didn't know with, thinking of sustainable funding practices, if there was, if we're not diverting a portion of building permit fees to that, if it's, if we could find ways to provide or make a use case for, but yeah, I know it's an uphill challenge.
it's a challenge. Not an insurmountable one, but it is a challenge.
Yeah.
So. Any other questions on this section? Okay, if there are, you can always come back, no problem. All right, so again, this next section is really about activating the program and making sure that people, meaning just people who aren't living and breathing public art in the community, can see that, hey, something's happening here, and the city cares about creativity and cares about the creative sector and cares about art. So one of the ways that we are recommending this happen, so that there is kind of critical mass around, kind of seeing public art on the ground, is establishing Conway's first cultural district. And, we're roughly using the boundaries of downtown. And that is very intentional, because that's obviously where people are, already gathering and spending time together. And so why wouldn't that be the first place to invest in? And so we're very focused on providing kind of a multifaceted approach to what that experience would be. And we understand that in order to apply any of these ideas, the city is going to have to dedicate significant resources to this geographic area for a number of years and to a number of efforts. So it's not just one thing, it's multi-tiered, and it's going to be really important to support all of those things. It includes supporting signature events within this district, supporting creative placemaking efforts, and encouraging creative economy use in your commercial buildings, as well as implementing public art projects kind of throughout the district. So, someone have a question?
Nope.
Me? That was just my voice reverberating to myself. Okay. The first strategy is to explore the viability of a creative incentive program to support the building of a cultural district. So, all of us know, we're all very aware of how difficult it is to start a brick and mortar business. And if you're an arts business or a creative sector business, it's even harder because the margins are so tight. And so one of the ways that we feel that the city could really build this synergy is through exploring developing a creative incentive program. And the incentive program would support galleries and performance art, places for live music, and it would allow any kind of for-profit organization that is creating art for consumption, for regular consumption, to receive a rent subsidy for a year. And as well as a startup grant to kind of offset those costs related to any relocation or advertising or any tenant improvements that we know are the costs are so substantial. It's important that the city explore what current market rent is within that district and then understand what a subsidy might look like. So what would allow a gallery to open downtown? What would allow a live music venue to open downtown? If the rent was X, then what? It's really important that this program really be undertaken as a private-public or a public-private partnership with many community institutions, because the city can't do this lift on its own. It's a very expensive endeavor, but we all know a rising tide lifts all boats, which I think is what all these organizations in Conway are all working toward. And this is something that really would support kind of an anchor district that is known for creativity. The next strategy is about hiring African-American artists to realize and celebrate the contributions of African Americans to downtown Conway, specifically in the Pine Street and Markham Street neighborhoods. Building upon the historic context study that was created in 2021, African American artists should be hired to share stories of past residents and events that took place throughout those neighborhoods. The city is currently working to place historic markers to note where physical buildings once stood, but going above and beyond, noting where buildings have come down, which is just, recognizing kind of the past without looking toward the future or honoring them in any way. Artwork would really support the recognition of that community's contribution to Conway and those specific neighborhoods to the city of Conway. The next is about investing in pedestrian scale placemaking projects within the district. And so recommending that a number of placemaking interventions be considered downtown, including pop-up alleys and pocket park programs. Some specific alleys that we're including for consideration are Chestnut, Locust to Parkway, Oak to Main, and then the Markham corridor. And then we have a specific potential pocket park location. And again, these are all potential. Nothing is bound for implementation, but that is the Pocket Lot by Blue Sail. We're recommending a downtown sculpture tour. And you guys have a series of bump outs at intersections that are really wonderfully landscaped. And so these kind of, in our minds, are no-brainers to place sculpture within to really enhance the pedestrian experience as you're walking around. We're really interested in pop-up food experiences. Again, really creating a synergy and an immersive experience that isn't, one kind of thing that you're experiencing at one time. It's really like, oh my gosh, everywhere I look, there's art and culture. It's awesome here. And then finally, we recognize the value of Simon Park and believe that it's a bit underutilized in terms of what it could be for the community and what it could offer in terms of a place that people are always gathering and experiencing something together. And these are just kind of a few pictures of things that we would think would be great here. Any questions on that strategy? No. Okay, we can come back if you do. All right. Strategy 2 is about launching the Mural Grant Program. So this is something that in every single conversation we heard how much people wanted to see more murals, but also how people wanted to pay artists, and also how expensive it is to place a mural on a building that you're actually paying an artist what they're worth. All those things are valid. And so in order to hear all of those things and make space for all of those concerns, we wanted to propose that the city, in partnership with other organizations, create a grant program where up to 25% of the total cost of the mural could be paid for by the city, essentially. Funds could be distributed on a first-come, first-served basis, and we would require that the property owner submit a contract with the artist to share how much money they have promised the artist. We want to understand that they have paid the artist for their concept, and we want to understand kind of the artist's past work and understanding if they are qualified to actually paint that piece. Any questions here? I want to say, I said this yesterday, within the downtown district, we do understand that a number of the buildings are on the National Register. We do believe, contrary to many folks' opinions, that murals and historic architecture can coexist very beautifully. And there are ways to do it on non-primary facades that do not disrupt the historic architecture and the historic fabric of buildings.
Kim, hot take. Agree?
I agree. No, they do it all the time in Fort Smith, so I mean, that's not.
I'd say they're rather known for it, right?
Yeah, it hasn't been a thing, so.
Okay. The third strategy is about investing in iconic public art and existing public spaces. So it's really easy to kind of think about a new program kicking off and only talking about new public spaces, because that's where we always are thinking about how projects are funded with new money. But in this case, we want to think about how to go back in existing public spaces and place public art within them. And so that includes some roundabouts. It includes entry to the Conway Community Center, Wood Simon Park, any privately owned walls throughout the entire city. And of course, we would be remiss if we did not mention the major trailheads or points where trails kind of branch throughout Conway.
Where are trails? Do you mean the walking path, the long walking path, or something else?
All trails. And the next strategy actually is specifically about trails, but
Great.
we wanted to put this in here. But here are some of the ways that we think that public art could be invested in specific areas. You could have murals on trails. You could have murals in some of your pedestrian streets. I love this snail piece. And putting it somewhere where people are like really surprised by seeing this giant snail. And then of course, I'm a super fan of really fabulous street furniture, and this is definitely fabulous. And then the next strategy is about investing in public art on trails and in parks. We have heard so many times how much Conway is known for its trails and parks. And that you guys are really not slowing down when it comes to investing in trails and parks and really supporting that recreation for your residents. And so we've kind of divided this recommendation into two types. One is for natural unprogrammed trails, where public art could be commissioned to really focus on drawing and creating deeper connections to the environment and to parks that are more natural and programmed rather than placing them on paved trails. The city in those locations could consider themes could consider various themes to explore about exploration in natural areas and natural parks, and could integrate pieces made of degradable materials. This creates a special opportunity for artists who are working with those very specific materials to educate users on environmental stewardship, as well as potential special facts and histories of Conway and its significance to the indigenous communities. In those natural and unprogrammed trails, we think that really stacking experiences like story time, trail walks, stargazing, or concerts at these locations could be really fabulous. Some of the locations for consideration include the Hendricks Creek Preserve, Jewel Moore Nature Reserve, the Settlement Park, and Blaney Hill. We're also recommending that one of the strategies be to consider what happens on paved program trails and paths, because those are a different user. Those are folks who are usually like on a walk for exercise, or they're on their bikes. And so we want to really think about how public art can be placed along those, including cycle tracks, to really support and kind of give folks exposure to the arts that's unsolicited. And then finally, you've got your more traditional parks like soccer parks, softball parks, and then playgrounds and things like that. And there's a really great opportunity to invest in public art in those parks as well. The fifth strategy is about investing in Conway's roadways through a variety of investments. We've got a few different types. Roundabout art, which, you all are probably so tired of hearing about. Roundabout art.
We just want to do some. Everybody else gets to, we just want to.
Banners where artists are actually creating those pieces. That's a really simple way of getting artists who aren't usually creating public art to participate in a public art program, because it could be really small pieces that are scanned or created digitally and then sent as a file, and then they're printed, and then you've got this beautiful piece of art that hangs, and you can change them out, and it's relatively inexpensive. We're also thinking about creative crosswalks, which is what you can see here, and then also some activation of alleyways and what that might take. It's also going to be really important that the city consider how these artists can think about tactical urbanism, so actually illustrating what new transportation patterns might be coming up with any new street projects, and artists can help facilitate that through actually creating artwork where the new infrastructure will be. And then finally, it's really important, I think, that the city honor your local artists and local creative community through establishing an artist database, so that when a developer does come and say, hey, I'd love to do a mural, or, I'm really interested in building out a collection for our lobby space in our apartment building, who could I contact? Well, here is this database that is self-nominating. The city is not endorsing any of these artists, but folks are able to come on and look at this and explore people's website, their past work, their name, where they're located, and really kind of say, okay, I'm totally buying into this local Conway artist, and the city can be a really great partner to help developers do that. Right. Any questions about all of those strategies before I move into the conceptual projects? I'm shocked. Y'all usually are real talkative.
There's a lot of stuff.
I know there's a lot to digest here. Okay. Again, we can come back if you do decide you have questions. I don't know what keeps happening to this. Excuse me for just a moment. Let's go back. Okay. So the first conceptual project, and again, these projects are really just to provide some ideas of what could happen and where they could happen and what price point they should happen at. And so when council sees this document, they're going to be able to flip back here and be like, oh my gosh, I can totally see where these projects are. There's going to be a map. It's going to show where they all are. They're distributed across the city. They're not just located downtown. And we hope that that's a way to really kick off interest and also funding in this project, because I think we all know without funding, these things are impossible. They're just great ideas. One of my favorite folks say, big dreams without action are just hallucinations. So that's how I always kind of think about what our work is. So the nature walk, we know that trails play a huge role in shaping who Conway is, both to its residents, but also within the region. And so a series of natural public artworks should be created with found foliage and material that's locally sourced that could be placed on multiple trails, so folks have a reason to kind of explore different trails throughout the city. These natural materials could break down over time and would require little to no maintenance. Depending on the scale of how the city wants to do this, we're recommending between $250,000 to $300,000 to implement a project of this scale. I think it's cool to place, like a really small piece on a trail that's kind of surprising for your average user who's using it regularly. But we're hoping that this becomes a real part of folks' experience when they're on the trails. And so in order to do that, you have to do it with an impact, which is going to take a lot of time and quite a substantial amount of money. The second project are the roundabouts. Of course, we are recommending that a substantial amount of money be allocated to each of these roundabouts. I have recommended multiple times to various parties that a minimum budget for a roundabout should be $200,000, because you don't want something that is so small that you can't see it, or so.
No, we don't.
Okay, yes. So as you can see, we're recommending some really beautiful pieces. If you're going to use roundabouts as a location, let's really think about how to place really great art there and make it be something that's beautiful. Also, how can it be lit? And this is a photo from Carmel, Indiana, as to how they've done that. The next is artist design playgrounds. I showed yesterday that there are no artist design playgrounds within a 4-hour drive of you guys. The closest one is in Tulsa. These are becoming, when they are integrated into a larger park design with stacked experiences on them, these are destinations for people. And people are driving to these places. And so I think that you guys could be so set up to do something like this and be a point of interest for people who are like, in the Dallas, Tulsa, Memphis area, because people are legitimately going to Tulsa. I don't know why you would do that. So to me, investing in something like this, where an artist is really at the helm of creating the imaginative experience for the user, which is a child and also a parent, what kind of experiences are you creating, and how many people are you bringing in to spend time at your restaurants and the bars and the theater or whatever else you're doing? This is just a really awesome way to kind of piggyback on what the city's already going to be investing in, and really thinking about how an artist can play a really important role here.
Amanda,
Sure.
I would say, I don't know if you have heard of the Rail Yard Park in Rogers.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's it's within a drivable distance of here. So if anybody hasn't seen it, I know Snaple's helped build it. It's pretty cool, and they're trying to create it as a way of connecting their businesses with their downtown corridor, kind of a similar feel. I love this idea. I'm just saying, if anybody wants to see an example.
Did an artist do that?
I know there's artist input, there's murals, I don't know if it was fully designed by an artist though, so I don't know.
Okay.
But it looks similar to what you're describing.
Okay, cool. I'm gonna look into that, because I thought that was done by Landscape Structures, which is a company who did all the play equipment, which is fine. But I'm interested to know that now that you bring that up.
Yeah, I don't know. I know they brought in muralists from different places to create murals on some of the spaces. I don't know who designed it though, so that's a good point.
Okay, I'm gonna check it out. Okay. Why? The next is the functional art program. So many cities are thinking about how artists can be involved in developing and creating benches, light posts, parklets, small sculptures, temporary events, things that you're already kind of building and spending money on. How can an artist be hired to do that? And also, how can you extend the public realm to be something that people are actually wanting to spend time in? So you can tell on both sides of the street in this image that the sidewalks are just sidewalks. And then they've created this really awesome parklet extension where people can sit, have a coffee, have a drink, have lunch, hang out. And when an artist designs it, you're paying an artist to do something awesome, and you're creating these really great spaces. And so one of the ways that we see Conway activating the artist community locally and also activating their cultural district is to really think about how artists can participate in making this functional art. We're recommending here that the city actually allocate a certain amount of money annually. We suggested that $15,000 be allocated annually, and then artists would actually apply and say, hey, I'm super interested in doing a parklet at this location with this business. And the city would grant them whatever they were requesting. So we're hoping that this is something, a lot of the programs and projects that we're recommending really do focus on placing the control and the ideation in the hands of the artist, which I think is really important for the program. All right. The next project is a mural festival. One of the ways that we thought that the city could really enjoy and celebrate its investment in that mural subsidy that we talked about in the strategy section would be to ask those businesses and those muralists to paint over one weekend. And then again, we're talking about stacking those experiences. So have food trucks, have live music, have movies at night, where people are able to come down and see every single year on this specific weekend these awesome murals getting painted downtown. We thought it'd be really fabulous, really fun, and would be a hit within the community.
We'd have to fight with Fort Smith with their unexpected. They do the exact same thing.
And how far of a drive is Fort Smith?
Hour and a half.
Yeah, roughly.
What'd you say?
About an hour and a half, depending on how
It's
fast.
far.
I mean, as long as we don't have it at the same time.
But it could be.
But theirs is unexpected. It happens at any time.
But I
Could
mean,
be the opposite season.
I think it'd be cool to do it.
But we kind of did it with the, you know,
Yeah.
the murals
Pollinator.
underneath the bridge.
Right.
Oh, the bridge one, yeah, a little something.
They weren't painted all at the same time. I mean, they were painted at the same time, but we didn't make
Yeah.
them paint at one weekend or something. But anyways,
Yeah, I mean, people love watching muralists paint, especially when they're of that scale. They're like super fabulous.
Ellen, one thing that Fort Smith does that's really nice is they have, you know, it rotates, right? Like you have a mural up there for a certain number of years, and then right about the time it's starting to get a little wear and tear, then it's up again for, you know, a new rotation, a mural painter. So they always have fresh art, always rotating in some known locations, but always getting refreshed and always enough to have, you know, 5 new spaces per. So.
Awesome. It's really awesome. I tried to talk to them and they wanted to charge me, so I didn't get to.
How much is it?
They have a fee that I can pay.
I got a little big for their britches, I think, for what it used to be.
Oh, no, thank you.
For a small fee.
For a small fee, we'll talk to you for 30 minutes. I'm like,
So,
wow.
on the project, on the mural festival, what's the allocation did you think that would be?
So, you know, if you guys decided that you wanted to subsidize murals at 25%, I mean, I'm going to suggest, like, I don't know, let's say a building is, you know, 50 feet deep and you're doing, it's a 2-story, so 50 times 24. So I can tell you exactly how much money you should allocate for a mural that size. So if we did, I mean, I think that for a mural, you know, by 50 feet deep by about 10 feet high, so that's 1 story. If you did 2 stories, let's say it's going to be 36, no, excuse me, maybe 24 inches high or 24 feet high. And you did $25 a square foot, which includes all the materials. That's $30,000 a mural. That would include the primer and the anti-graffiti coating, the artist fee, and all the paint and all the materials that would be required, including a lift and scaffolding. So if the city is subsidizing at 25%, $7,500 per mural. Let's say you did 4. I mean, not all of them would be of that scale, right? But maybe you had two big ones that were that size, and you had like 3 small ones. So maybe $20,000 a year. And that wouldn't prevent people who weren't receiving grant money from participating.
What was that total you quoted?
It's $25 a square foot. 25. I always quote $25 to $30 a square foot, depending on the experience of the artist, and that includes all the materials, all the priming, all the anti-graffiti coat, and any equipment rental that they have to have.
also, yeah.
Or set up a scaffold to move from point to point. Cheaper, but more labor intensive.
Yeah. And some, you know, like some muralists have scaffolding that they own and they're willing to share, and you know, that's a very common. So, all right. So the next project is about gateways, and it really focuses on how people are coming into Conway by car. And we are focused on Interstate 40, on exit 129, 127, and 125, and placing really fabulous pieces of art at those exits. You know, we've talked substantially about some really awesome creative lighting that could go there and how a mural could accompany that creative lighting. We talked about thinking about something like this. I always love to share this artist. Her name is Vicky Scurry's work. She's one of not many females who are working in large scale sculpture, and she's super talented, as you can tell. So I just wanted to share her work as we looked at imagery of public art. But that's the 6th project. And then the 7th and final project is a downtown sculpture tour. And I mentioned earlier in the discussion, those specific bump outs, and those intersections are Oak, Main, Chestnut, Front, and Court. They all have that additional kind of space that's right there at the main intersection, at intersecting roads, and sculptures could be placed within those. We're recommending that the city pour 10 plinths in those locations, and then this is a sculpture tour of existing work. So you do a call for artists. They would photograph existing work they wanted to enter into the show, and you all would be able to choose which ones you'd like. And then 10 artists would receive a $1,500 stipend to leave their work in Conway. It would hopefully be for a year, but the city would understand that at any point those sculptures could be sold, and then a new sculpture would have to come in. And then annually, we're recommending that the city purchase one of those per year. So the first year, you're spending $20,000 to pour the plinths, plus we're recommending a $25,000 annual allocation to rotate those sculptures out. This would keep things fresh and fun. You could do it during the Mural Festival. You could do it on the opposite season. But again, we tried to really think through projects that had varying price points and varying scale so that it would be both something that could be accomplished in an easier way. So $25,000 annually is really different than $250,000 per gateway piece, right? Mm-hmm. And so we wanted to provide a bunch of different options for decision makers to consider.
Amanda, can I?
And with that, that is my last slide.
I have a question about the sculpture. So
Sure.
the $1,500 stipend for the artist, and then who pays to move and install the sculptures?
The artist would bring that. They would bring them and then take them away.
Okay.
Part of what the stipend goes to.
I think they only might need more than $1,500 for some of them. I'm not sure that.
Yeah.
Depending on, there's so many variables there. Yeah.
I mean, we'd have
Just don't
plinths of
submit
a certain size,
them. I mean,
right?
that's more than,
Right. It could be something really heavy and solid, and it could be difficult to move. They could come from far away. I don't know.
So I guess if
Yeah,
we're
I mean,
upfront with that,
stipend
have
would
to-
totally change.
Yeah.
I would be happy if it was more, of course.
Thank you.
Don't questions, comments, anything you want us to think about or ask?
Yes, there was a couple of these. It sounded like y'all had quite a few projects thought through, which is fantastic. Kind of placement, roundabout locations, Donaghy and all that kind of stuff. Has all of those locations kind of been vetted through with the city? And are they all, are more specifics, not more specifics, but are they all vetted and doable?
Many people at the city have reviewed the draft that has all the locations listed. Those locations were offered by staff, and also, some were removed. Some of the ones that I thought would be good were removed, so that told me they weren't good locations and they wouldn't be appropriate. But yes, they all have been vetted by staff.
And is that a part of the total master plan document versus the list of all those locations and that stuff? Because these were kind of not general, but want to know for sure I can put a roundabout on Prince Street. Because we've had some issues with utilities being in the way and
Sure.
Logistic stuff. And so I wanted to. That was, I think, one of our main goals was kind of identifying those locations and making sure they were good.
Yeah, and Kyle was working on pulling a map with
All right.
all the roundabouts, and then
Yeah, so we have that now from Conway Corp. They've given us the maps with all the
Sweet.
utilities for every roundabout. They would not give us the future ones, just because I guess that was a little
To be
more
determined.
problematic for them to get on their end, but we do have all the current existing roundabouts.
There's plenty of
I'll
stuff.
send those to you.
Really 29 now?
Yeah.
I think it's up to 31
Let's see.
now, I think.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Myself, I too.
But plenty, yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think we mentioned this in the the meeting Monday with the other advisory group. It's a good head start, and it's years worth of potential work in all of that.
Yeah.
But I appreciate that there's funding numbers attached to that as well, so that hopefully as the presentation goes through council and as city has seen it as well, I think a major roadblock that has happened heretofore has been either feasibility of project budget or placement of the art in particular. And so working it through this way and having sort of an initial understanding of where things could go, having that list would be great. Not for our use, but like for y'all to spread around with the rest of the city positions that are also planning on that. Anything we can do to remove any question of like, well, will it be suitable? Are we gonna run into things with Common Court? Well, no, we have the list. Here's things that look pretty good and pretty open. The more of that is out there and funneling to us as options instead of outward from this committee as possibilities, those seem to get better traction.
I think it's gonna be on the
yeah.
master plan,
Yeah.
so we should
Yeah.
be good.
So hopefully that combined with the fact that we're calling our budgetary shots a year in advance, hopefully our council member who was on the call yesterday, David Grimes, and some of the other indications that folks are behind it will help with some of that sticker shock, because I think some of this too is going to come with a larger price tag than they're used to seeing. It's great that we have $229,000 of funds remaining, sort of, in our budget, but that's one of these projects, or a portion of one of these projects if we're trying to shoot for one of the bigger ones. So I think a lot of it will be, let's figure out and advise and work with the city on some small wins, and then pick an elephant to eat, work on that, because a lot of good ideas, all of which we will not be able to do right out the gate, unfortunately.
We had to have a starting point.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Direction.
Goals.
Thanks for all your hard work, Amanda.
Yes,
Yeah,
thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome, and I'm sorry that you're not looking at the actual document, but you will.
Soon. But yeah, again, just, potential scope, having those recommended, having an outside force to recommend and say, hey, we've taken a look and y'all have suggested things from the city level that here's some good options and some good opportunities will be extraordinarily helpful in getting some projects actually greenlit and off the ground and moving forward. So, yeah.
Agreed. And, we're putting a lot of pictures in here too. And pictures are always really helpful when people are like, oh my gosh, what do you mean that we could have a mural festival? What do you mean there could be a sculpture tour? So yeah, the images will also help.
Definitely.
Anything else? Okay.
Like I said the other day, still a lot of stuff.
It's a lot.
Let's stop.
But
Well, again, we'll be there May 10th, and then there'll be 2 meetings after that. And we hope, by May 24th, that you guys have an adopted public art master plan and the city's moving forward and turning over kind of a new leaf. And I hope that in 5 years, when you're looking back at what you've done, there's been a lot that has changed, I would hope, from July 1 to then. So, and I hope a lot more public art is implemented and placed.
I mean, goodness, clarity of role, if nothing else, is extraordinarily helpful. So,
Yeah. Absolutely. Okay, awesome. Well, if that's it, then I'm going to let you all go. I know you have 2 other items on your agenda. And as always, you have my contact information. If there is anything that you did want to share or send me, feel free to go ahead and send that. And I'm sure that James and Kyle will be sending you the draft, hopefully next week.
sure Kyle will.
I'm saying that to myself. Yeah. All right, y'all. Thank you so much for all of your hard work on this.
Thank you, Amanda.
Thank you.
We'll see y'all in a few weeks.
All right.
Sounds good. Thank
I
you.
vote
All right.
yes for all 3 things.
Perfect.
Thanks, good night.
Turn off the weird mirror. Yeah. Cool. Yeah. I guess I'll ask again for the benefit of these folks. Y'all feeling pretty solid with the division of, I mean, that's like, it's a lot of additional duties that are flowing to you and James.
Oh yeah, I think for now it's gonna be fine, but certainly long-term, we definitely wanna get a position so that it can, take some of that off of our plates. But I think now, since it's still is a relatively small collection, it'll be manageable, but the more that grows, then the more,
Well, yeah.
we need a new position, so.
Nice. Well, I'm hoping too we can do some proactive things that work within the guidelines. Like, for instance, Blue Cycle, great piece of art. However, it was implemented without much of a maintenance plan, and we need to talk about the things that are existing in there and how do we keep them up. Or if we can't keep them up properly, what's our deaccession plan for that as well? And things about like moving dust up. We now have clarity that we do need to have a replacement piece to go there before we can move that. But there is will to move that all around, so that kind of, for our next year project, that's a roundabout that we have access to, that if we have an applicable piece of art to replace it there, so.
I didn't even think of, I liked her idea about an already done piece of art and have artists say, hey, I've got this that would work out perfectly
Exactly.
here. That might be a faster solution
I
to
definitely think so.
getting it changed out and done. I don't know how you send out an RFP for that.
Well, it's
but-
existing art that you
Yeah.
work out.
Yeah.
I love
So,
it.
but
And it would
just
just be-
have stipulations on size and.
I was gonna say, yeah, because we could
It
set,
has to be very big.
yeah, any number of existing plinths and be like,
And it
and
lights up and it plays music.
So, can we start that? Can we start the process of asking people for?
Yeah, I mean, we can certainly look into it, yeah.
So is that a motion
Well,
to start looking?
just-
I think
just
it
an
was.
idea.
do we want to try to find a piece of existing art to place there, or do we want to try
Well,
to
like
do a call?
not a call for artists, but a call, I don't know.
Oh, it
How do
had
you
to be a
advertise
call
for
to
that?
artists.
Call to artists.
Yeah.
Yeah,
For them to submit, so it's still called for artists.
Mhm. Yeah, to see if anybody has any pieces they want to submit that
Yeah.
would work there.
I think it would sum it up.
so what I'm hearing is a motion to perhaps look for existing artwork, or put a call out for existing artists for a piece to replace dust up, something of so we would define appropriate scale, placement.
Give them the size of the roundabout and all that good stuff.
Yeah, and say we're looking for a piece that is appropriate for this dimensions, no smaller than, probably 75% larger than what dust up is.
Where's this up?
It's in the Hendricks roundabout. It's the small,
Got it.
yeah, the red sculpture. with
The Lego one.
Yeah. They also requested that we have a place for dust up to go, which I think we were all, well, all right, I said we were all. Last time we discussed it next to the Red Bridge,
Yes.
seems like a natural place.
Mhm. Yeah.
It could also be the
There's
first
also-
prototype of like a trailhead marker.
Yeah,
Right.
trailhead, or even some of these downtown bulb outs.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, it's a small little.
Yeah.
The size would be appropriate.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And be much more striking in that
Yeah.
location
Right,
amongst
yeah.
downtown.
I can find a place really
Yes.
quick.
Well, then maybe for our next meeting, we come with some possibilities for where dust up goes. And then we can
And,
explore
yeah,
more.
See if we could send out something.
Yeah, I can
for-
see what the next kind of step is, but I think everybody acknowledges that that's
Needs to
definitely
happen.
not the right location
Yes.
that it's in right now.
Mhm.
But that might give us some, that might give us again some leeway in a project to work on in the midterm, because our next big thing after hopefully this all gets adopted will be trying to scope out and call our shots for 2023. Because we'll need to put together a project scope, work with the newly formed public art blah 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 committee inside the city, and start acting in that advisory role. Where we can suggest some things, but also work with that group to see where maybe there's some unexpected developments or places or roadway projects or other things that we can inject some public art into. But in the meantime, moving dust up might be our last, we can get that as something that's done, that the public has asked about and everything else. And asking for existing art too, hopefully will streamline the process a little bit too. And get us our first foray into asking for that sort of stuff.
Cool. Mural shield still on hold?
Yeah, so we have the anti-graffiti coating now, so that's already arrived and it's in City Hall. But yes, the mural shield is
Actual
still,
first coat piece.
yeah, so that is still out of stock. So I'm not sure what the deal is. I've emailed them. They had an email address on the website. I have not heard back, and that was about a week and a half ago. So most likely we're not going to hear back at this point. But it just seems like it's going to be out of stock for a long time. We've been checking on this now for a couple months, and
Yeah.
still is showing that they have no inventory.
Orlando knows of any other manufacturers.
Is there
that
another
would-
option besides this one?
Mhm.
We can check and see if there is.
I mean, Spirit is the same, yeah, if that's been out of stock for so
That's a good
long.
idea to ask Amanda.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, it might just be out of stock for the rest of the year or something.
Yeah, there was a painting
knows?
shortage.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know one of the artists brought it up to me the other day because they were like, we're gonna go out there and paint something new. And I was like, no, wait, hold on. Wait till they were gonna try to coordinate it on their own to redo the stuff. And I was like, no, wait, please, until we have the shield to do it. That way we can actually protect what you're doing.
Right,
So they were excited to hear that. I just know they're probably wouldn't want to wait another 6 months to,
right.
so if there's an alternate option. let's
Even
say.
a-
I can
even
check
a
with
stopgap
Felicia
option.
and see if there's some
Yeah.
other website or another place that we can order from that is maybe a similar product but actually has it in stock.
Yeah.
Right, we can do it, yeah, more immediately. Cool, well, thank you for checking up on that. All right, projects, Tiny Toads.
I have been trying to get a hold of my friend, Mr. Calvin, to see where he is. And I just texted him a few minutes ago again to see if, and I haven't heard from him, so. But that doesn't, he's kind of, he doesn't keep his cell phone on all the time, so. I have tried to call him a couple times too, but anyways, I'll keep it, I'll hopefully have something between now and our next meeting.
Nice. What's our,
I said he is on Facebook.
what's our time frame? Like, are we beholden to the grant for a certain time frame for that? I just want to make sure we don't miss any
No, we're
windows.
fine on the grant. They just did the actual awarding of it just recently, so we got,
Nice.
honestly, I don't know, but we have plenty of time.
There's
It's not
breathing
within
room.
this calendar year.
Right.
Yeah.
Perfect,
Through
okay.
the spring.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, then we'll continue to reach out. If you need us to all bug them, let us know.
Yeah.
Poetry project.
Deadline is Sunday, so if you guys know anybody who would want to submit who has not done so, please help spread the word. If you're on social media, go and share the post from the Blackbird page or the Conway Public Art page. That would be great. We've had about 25 people submit so far. Some of them have submitted, they could submit up to 3, so some of those have submitted multiple.
Nice.
There's a handful of kids that have submitted, and most of them have been adults. But we kind of ran into an issue. I reached out to the marketing communication coordinator at the public schools, and they wouldn't let me send that out to the teachers. They sent me to this peach jar thing they do, which I'm a parent, I don't read it. So it costs money to add your flyers to it, and it goes to an email to the parents, and anyway, so if we do this again, I think it would be helpful to figure out a way to coordinate with the schools better to get the information to all the teachers more ahead of time,
Right.
because I was able to get it in the hands of a few teachers I knew, that it would be helpful. I think more teachers would want to participate if they had been made aware of it ahead of time. So that's one thing to keep in mind if we do this again. So, but anyway,
I put it in the downtown hub.
well, thank you.
You're welcome.
And that one, some of the vinyl signage like she was talking about on top of, that's one of the things up for contention, right? For
Banners.
banners, yeah.
That could be an option.
Nice. I just thought if we tiptoe into that with this project, it would be a nice one to then say for some of the things that's recommended in the plan, then some other art things that we can do for that. And,
I'd love to put some banners up downtown, and but that's me hanging.
Yeah,
busy.
work on one for you.
That'd be a great idea.
right? All
It's
those
in the
fancy
landing
light
strip.
poles.
Need something because they don't have arms on the side to put hanging basket we have in the front though.
Sweet. Cool. Any other new business to bring for the order of the committee?
Trying to figure out how to share. You gotta remind me how to share things.
Yeah, it is okay.
Usually something, the pop-up thing is different than
Instagram or Facebook?
Facebook.
Okay, yeah, I can share this.
Cool. Any other final thoughts or concerns before we close out?
So May 10th, should we all try to make that meeting?
Yeah, is May 10th closed or is that open?
I think it's definitely gonna be May 10th, but
Okay.
I'll check and see
Like,
whether,
is it an
I'm pretty
open
sure you all
meeting?
should be able to come,
It's a
yeah.
public
The
meeting.
public meeting, oh, the May 10th one is, I know the
It's a-
16th was the public hearing, but the May 10th is open as well.
Public
I'm just about
meeting.
certain that it would
It's
be
city
fine for
council
you all.
meeting, right? So
Yeah,
Gotcha.
I say, we want to show support, so that's
Yeah.
not next Tuesday, but the Tuesday after.
yeah.
And is
And
that
it's my
here
birthday, so.
That would be at City Hall, yeah.
Oh, okay, don't put that on,
in the fancy room?
In the fancy room,
We gotta
yes.
bring Jenny a cupcake, it's a birthday, because I won't be able to be here for the public meeting, I'll be out of town.
That bodes well though, for,
Right?
we'll use that birthday energy to really sell it in the 10 minutes that she has. That can either go really well, you know, as kind of a, yeah, we've seen the plan, we know it, let's go. Awesome, well, as this rolls out, you know, let us know ways we can help, especially because again, it's gonna be more and more stuff that is added to y'all's plate on top of your other jobs, so, you know, we're kind of doing a turducken of positions, right? So any ways that we can help in that, provide materials, research. Again, I know a lot of stuff that has originated from here has found lots of roadblocks, but I know I like this approach because a lot of things that are pre-vetted that come to us, then we have a little bit more leeway and freedom and space to work.
Yeah, and I
with,
think
so.
since staff has already reviewed this, you know, this is something that a lot of people are already on board with here at the city, so it
Yeah.
should hopefully help to
Bodes
make things
well,
go
right?
a little more quickly maybe.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think just generic, you know, research on, you know, what would be good to put in a certain roundabout, or, you know, if somebody wants to put up a mural somewhere, what's appropriate for that space, things like that. Yeah.
A whole bunch of pictures from Carmel.
Yes.
Awesome.
As there
Well, thank y'all so much. I move that we adjourn.
Oh,
We all go home. Kim has already decided we're done, so.
I'm sorry.
Agreed.